I love sharing stories on Go Solo Live. If you love them as well, please consider making a small financial contribution to help support the show. You can go to www.patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Go Solo Live and show your love. There are some great gifts of appreciation, and I appreciate your support.
Welcome to Go Solo Live.
Don't you mean Go Solo Live? Have you ever been asked, why on earth would you travel alone? Go Solo Live not only answers that question, but celebrates life as a midlife solo traveler. This is a safe place for women to come together to reminisce about their travels, encourage others to travel, and to dig into the real lessons learned from these journeys. Now join Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel as she and her guests share stories of the solo travelers of midlife women.
Hello, sisters, and welcome to Go Solo Live. This is Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel. It's time to sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy my conversation with Charlene Burke. She'll share her stories of road trips that are sure to entertain you. And today I'd like to welcome Charlene Burke to the show. Thanks for joining us, Charlene.
Oh, thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm so glad to be here.
And as we're getting started in our conversation, we always do some pre-conversation. So there's stuff that my listeners will not have heard that we've talked about off the air. And that always inspires me to where to get started in our conversation when we jump on and start recording. And you, as we were transitioning into the recorded segment today, you were talking about this basic foundational philosophy that you have about life and learning and things like that. And to me, that could be the core of where our conversation goes. So would you mind starting us off by sharing that?
I would be happy to. It's very simple. I firmly believe that knowledge and education is foundational to personal freedom. And it often is the case, our knowledge and our education is an experience that we've had out in the world. And we've walked away from that experience with something that we can learn from and put into our lives and be better from.
Perfect. And that is a great place to start as we start talking about travel and solo journeys and personal discovery. And we, in general, when we talk about travel, you're going to hear some stuff about destinations, where we've gone. But the destination that is often most important out of any of these travels is this destination I call Destination You, where you're uncovering these layers of yourself or you're exploring these interests that you might not have known that you had. And those opportunities allow you to then shift or pivot just a little bit in what you do or how you look at things or how you think. And then you go forward after you travel just a little bit different than when you started.
I call that unintentional and unintended consequences and discovery, because it's really never part of the plan when I travel. I don't plan to grow spiritually when I travel. I don't plan to be this awesome person when I'm done. Instead, when I travel, I approach it in the same way that I do pretty much anything else that I set out to do. And that is to be open to what's going to happen. I make plans. I have the map before GPS. I travel with a map. Yes, pick a state, I have a map to it. And I still use them because I don't always trust my GPS. Learn that lesson. And, side trips, road trips. Anyway, so I would plan all that. And what that means is, where am I going to stay? Yeah. And then I get there and say, no, I don't want to stay there. I want to stay here instead. And realize afterwards that it was a better place that I stayed because I met some interesting people I never would have met at the other place. I heard stories that I never would have heard. I was guided to an attraction in the town that I never would have been guided to had I gone to the first place. But to be open and flexible, right? To experience what's happening. And sometimes it happens while I'm on the road, on the drive, not at the destination or even afterwards. So that's why I call it a wonderful thing. Get out, get in the car, go. I tell this to people all the time. You got an itchy foot? You want to go see something new? Get in the car and go. 6 hours later, figure out where you showed up.
Well, and there's usually a reason. There's some intuition. There's some guidance happening on that. And I love that you're talking about this idea of an unintentional consequence. And I believe that when we're open, as you talked about the difference between planning and then flexing and being open, so many things can truly happen for us if we allow them to. But I also am a fan of traveling with intention. And I'm going to save that conversation for a little bit later as well. I would like us to continue down this path because first thing I want to hear is give me an example of a time when you're driving and you have that unintentional growth happening while you're in the car.
Sure. So one trip in particular I'm thinking of was a 2-week road trip. I took out west to Denver. And I drove from Louisville to Denver and decided to take 2 weeks because I could. And driving into Illinois and then into Kansas, Illinois into Missouri was eye-opening. It was interesting. I'm driving along. I've turned off the radio. I don't have anything else happening. We have bright blue skies. It's a beautiful day. Nothing untoward, right? It's like you look out the window and it's like, oh, this is a gorgeous day. What have you? Yeah, and I'm driving along and I'm just struck by a landscape that what it told me was that because my eyes are open, I'm actually seeing something I never would have seen before and realized that I entered the trip with one idea of what I was going to see, and now I'm seeing something completely different. It is as simple as that. I fully expected during that portion of the trip to have flat landscape, boring, boring soybean, wheat, and cornfields, and the occasional tree that got lost as a bird had dropped a seed kind of thing, and maybe, possibly some cattle if I got lucky. That was my expectation, honestly. And I was okay with that. That's why I had plenty of CDs in the car with me. It's not a problem. But I'm driving along, and there's this section of rolling hills with gullies, and then, again, this landscape that said, this is completely different than my expectation. And that thought and that kind of thinking, when you experience that, what I do is I take that and say, well, here's just another lesson. To be careful of my expectations, not only of myself, but of other people, places, and things. And then it follows, make note, this looks like a place to explore on the way back.
Absolutely. And I love that. That's exactly it. That we can go in with a particular assumption and whether you're traveling via car or bus or train or airplane, you can go in with a particular assumption. And a lot of people are like, I just want to get there, right? Like your trip doesn't actually start until you're wherever your destination is. And I say bull hockey on that because instead, if you're open to what is possible, you can find beauty and joy in all sorts of stops along the way.
I am in full agreement, absolutely full agreement. So, for instance, on that would be stopping at a roadside diner. And what I mean by roadside is literally off the highway, boom, that's about the only thing that's ever going to be in that spot is that one little diner. And sitting outside and just looking around and wondering, this is what gets me. So how in the world did this start? How in the world did this diner get here? How many people drove through and this one person decided that I'm going to stake a claim and put a diner here? Well, now there is the perfect conversation. So I go inside and I ask, so how did this come about? And I get to meet somebody and I hear the story about the diner.
Yes.
And it's sometimes it's really interesting and sometimes it's like, oh, okay, somebody got tired of traveling and said, I'm done. This is it. This is what's happening, but at least I learned something.
But that idea of inquiry, I'm curious if you
Oh,
think about approaching your world, your travel every once in a while as if you're a 2-year-old asking why or what is this and that idea of just wonder
mhm.
can be ignited when you travel.
Now, see, this is why I love road trips. If I can drive, I will. I really do not like to fly. And the primary reason I don't care to fly is because you're so limited in the experience.
Absolutely. You're
Just-
not alone. Many of my guests have shared this as their reason for doing road trips.
And to be on a road trip, as I said, I was struck by that one spot. It was in Illinois, just before I went into Missouri. And it was forever indelible in my brain, right? Indelible marker here, as an experience that I never would have had I flown. Now, I've flown since I was an infant. That's not a problem. I don't care for flying. I don't like it because it limits the kind of experience that I can have. Give me a road trip any day. I don't care. Shoot, I just went down to Florida. I've been down to Florida 3 times this year, drove it. What the heck? I wanted to go.
That's awesome. But then, so how do you, aside from being appreciative of your surroundings, what are some things that you do to engage when you're in a car, especially when you're doing that as a solo road trip? It's how many hours to Florida from where you are?
Oh, if I were to drive it straight where I was going was 16 hours.
Okay. So it's a hike. It's a 2-dayer.
So I could stretch it as far as I wanted to. Yeah.
That's a true statement. I love, again, it's
And
about the journey, not the destination.
That's the point. See, so I've driven to Florida where it's been more of a 11 or 12-hour drive because, northern Florida or mid or southern Florida. And I've made the decision, well, do I want to split it up? And how much do I want to split it up? And where do I want to split it up? And when I do that, I think, well, where have I been already? Where would be an interesting place to go instead? Or if I am crunched for time and have to go through the same route, what's another thing that I could see on the way? Sometimes a lot of times now, because I have access to the internet, I get online and I kind of check out what's around, and I'll make a note that, I really want to see this on the way. And again, this happens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on my way to see the new thing. Maybe it's a park. Maybe it's an attraction. Maybe it's like in Bowling Green, Kentucky, when the Corvette Museum had a sinkhole suddenly happen in it.
Wow.
Yeah, you could go in and see the sinkhole. Go figure.
And I don't think I knew that this happened. So the Corvette Museum in Louisville?
Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Bowling Green,
Basically,
Kentucky.
That's where the Corvette, that's where they actually make Corvettes.
Right.
And so
And it had a sinkhole.
It had a sinkhole and some really nice vets got gobbled up. And so now they've restored pretty much all of them, right? But they still have this little area that you can see where it was a sinkhole. But quite honestly, he was charging people like $5 to go in just to see the vets down in the bottom of the sinkhole. It was great.
That's awesome.
Now, tell me, if you were in a plane, you would have missed that.
True statement.
But in a car, you can go, you can see who else is interested in silliness like that, and then realize it's not really that silly because that could have been my house. Wait a minute. Now, see, this is how I think and why I love to do road trips.
Yeah.
So I'm down there and I'm thinking, this entire area I know has an underground cave system that is incredible.
Yes.
Mammoth caves. And where I live, we have incredible caves, which of course got me thinking then, just how far does that cave system go? So now there's a note for me to check and to learn something else from that one little side trip, it's pit stop, if you will. I'm going to go look that up and I'm going to go learn a little bit more about not just that area, but now we've got an entire cave system I can look at. Then I learned, this is what happens. I learned that with that cave system comes the hidden aquifers that I had no idea were in areas. And then there's areas that actually had minerals and natural resources. And I just learned a whole heck of a lot.
Sure.
Off of that one experience.
And then you share that experience. You know what I mean? So that when you share that experience, it makes it even better because then you get to reinforce what the quality of that experience was for you. as well as you get to expose others to something that they may have never been exposed to before.
I love that you said that, because I can get excited and I can get enthused about a particular experience that I had or I survived, or because I've got some adventures too in there. And then I can watch other people get enthralled by the story. But what's even more fun is when they've had something similar and now we're connecting.
Yep.
Now, this is important. And I need to say this. It's important because I am an introvert. I have social anxiety. And I leaned toward, I was extremely shy until I started my business in 2008. And I can only say that it took me about a year of starting my business, and I just got over the shyness. Had to force myself through it. But up until then, there I am, this introvert with social anxiety and very shy. And I still, just like anybody else, need to have that level of connection with people.
Yep.
And these kind of stories is where the connections happen. So I could start telling somebody what I experienced. They're getting excited saying, oh, that happened to me too. Or I had something similar, except it was over here in Wisconsin, or maybe it was up in Michigan or in New Brunswick or up way out in Alaska. Well, how cool is that? What did you do? And before you know it, we're beyond just conversation. We're actually connecting.
Really connecting. And possibly in this day and age, what's nice about those kinds of connections is it may be something that creates an ongoing relationship. It's so much easier to do in this world of social media, where you can say, okay, well, this is great. I'm going to keep following you on Facebook, so I want to see your next trip.
There you go. We have that. But I can also tell you that having been online, and my entire business is online, I've been virtual since 2008. And heavily involved in social media. So a gal that I had met on social media, now this was a trip I took down to Florida with a friend of mine. I dragged her with me. And she ended up enjoying the bejeebies out of it. But we stayed with a gal that I just met on Facebook. Now, we had a relationship on Facebook. We'd gotten to know each other. And she invited us to her home. And I thought, so... all right, this is where you really plan it out, right? Told you I had some adventures.
Right.
So, I'm willing to do that. The first thing is I'm taking somebody with me. Second thing is I've already scoped out the hotels. It's in my car, so I know how to get out of there quick. I've got it mapped out of where I'm supposed to be staying with her. Okay, we've got the cell phone. Friend has a cell phone. We've set it up ahead of time. If there's like an emergency word or something, make the phone call. We're out of there.
Right.
And that it's not a big deal. We just leave. It's really okay. And all the safety things, right, that so many people will get hung up on, I planned for. And honestly, it was a beautiful trip. Been there a couple of times. She's a fantastic host. Her entire family's wonderful. And, I can go there. I can make a call right now, and I have a place to stay if I want down in that area of Florida. And she will welcome me with open arms and feed me wonderful food and just say when it's time for me to go, not a problem. See you. It was great to see you.
It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. And it's funny because I'm glad to hear you talking about this. I am going to make sure that people know, it's great because I get to see everybody face to face. We record using a tool called Zoom. And so I do that with video, but we never post the videos. So nobody sees how old people are, and you're not old. But I do want to share relative perspective because we have listeners of all ages. So would you mind sharing your age?
I am happy to say that just a few days ago, I celebrated 53.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
The reason why I asked that is because what you're talking about in terms of that kind of sustained connection is something that I hear more from a younger generation. And that, I've chaperoned a couple of study abroads, and those students are connecting like crazy. They form fast friendships. They stay connected via social media. And they do really look at those people that they've connected with as, this might be somebody that I'm interested in traveling with, or traveling to, if I'm going there, I would certainly be comfortable staying with them. And, you're talking about that in a whole different generation as well. So I want to recognize that spans generations.
It does. I think that I have a bit of an ease with it because I literally grew up traveling. Literally. It was it was just normal in our family. It was either vacations that we took as families. We took long road trips and camping trips. I have a mother who's an adventurer. I mean, the woman, she decided, to me, this is an adventure. She took the van and a pop-up camper, took my 2 brothers, teenage boys, and 2 of their friends cross country. To me, that was an adventure. And to her, the adventure part came when the boys, they're on the highway and the boys are screaming that she has to stop because there's smoke coming out of the camper. And by the time she had pulled over, stopped the vehicle, the camper was in full flames. They were able to save a couple of suitcases, and then they found a lodge to stay in. Now, this is my mother. What does she talk about? She says, it was time to go home. I was tired of sweaty stock smell. So this is the kind of what I grew up with, right? Now, I also have a mother. She's 75 years old now, but she only just a few years ago stopped traveling the country with her travel trailer.
Got it.
She decided it was time. She's taken off and she's going to see the country and she's going to find a place to go in the winter. She wasn't sure where, so she went all over, found a place, and now she has a permanent place that she stays in Florida. But until then, it was quite a few years of, where are you headed now, Mom? Well, I'm gonna try Tucson. I haven't been to Tucson yet. I'm going to try Albuquerque. I haven't tried that
yet.
yet.
Restless feet. She's unsettled.
We call them itchy foot. And it's not really that we're unsettled. We have an intense curiosity.
Okay.
And we're always questioning.
Okay.
And I just grew up with, well, if you have a question, go find the answer. And so I laugh because even my husband, he'll look at me and he'll say, what do you mean you wonder what Mount Rushmore looks like? We're going tomorrow. I said, well, if it were up to me right now, I'm ready. I can literally pack for a 2-week trip, a 1-month trip. I can literally have it done in an hour. He needs a little more time.
Okay, well, that's okay.
But I'll do that. I'll get a wild hair, or I'll be talking with somebody and I'll make notes. Isn't that interesting? I want to know more. I want to actually see that. And I'll just tell them, I say, listen, I'm going to take off for 4 or 5 days. This is where I'm headed. This is the plan. Or it might be just a long weekend. And I just get in the car and I go. And interesting things happen along the way. And,
So it sounds like you've been doing this forever. So how did you introduce your partner and then later the husband, to that this is actually an important part of your life?
Oh, well, it began when we were just good friends. And here's the interesting thing. We were good friends. Neither one of us had money. We weren't working. And so he had unemployment and I had, if I recall correctly, I had a couple extra bucks that were thrown my way by some friends. It was just during that time, right? I'm in my mid-20s. And he says, well, there's nothing for us to do. And I just looked at him and I said, how much money you got? So this is what happened, right? We threw our money, we're talking change and ones, on the kitchen table. And I said, well, that's enough to fill the gas tank. Let's go. He just, what? I said, let's go. And so what we did was, because I knew the area,
right?
We literally filled my gas tank in my car because his was really a sucky kind of car. And so it was mine. I'm trying to be nice. And I knew about how far we could go on a tank. And we went. And he thought that was the niftiest, neatest thing. You talk about cheap entertainment. I mean, we went to a really small town in southern Indiana. It's called Medora. And it is hidden in valley between really tall hills. I'm not going to call them mountains because they're really not. But it has a beautiful little canal. And the canal has a little boat on it that's pulled by horses. And the downtown area is like set in the 1880s, right? Just the look of it. Of course, everything was modern. We're talking back in the 80s when we went. And we just walked. And what did we see? We saw interesting people. We ate interesting food. We looked around, and it all cost us like maybe $5.
Mm-hmm.
But the point was, it was an experience.
Yes.
And so we drive home, or, drive back. And like I said, we were just friends. And we turned into running buddies because he
Nice.
knew he could call me on a Saturday morning and say, listen, you want to go someplace? Sure. Where you want to go? I don't know. We'll figure it out. All right. Get the map.
Nice.
You get the map or get the atlas. Get it out.
Okay.
And I've done this. Now I'm gonna challenge your listeners right now. If you don't have a map, go to the library, go to the gas station. I fully understand.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to do this on your phone, and you'll soon hear why. I want you to lay the map out. That map's going to be of the state that is closest to you. And I say that because I'm in southern Indiana, so I
Sure.
can go into Kentucky.
You can go anywhere.
In 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a day trip. Plan a day trip. Just put that map down, close your eyes, and pop your finger down. Go fill the gas tank. Go.
Yep.
And if you're concerned about food, if you're concerned about toiletries, pack them. Pack them. Pack a little lunchbox, your favorite snacks, throw in some tunes.
That's one of the joys about car travel, though, is that,
Yes.
like when I'm talking to people and we're talking about air travel, I really, really, really encourage to travel light, and not just literally, but figuratively traveling light as well, that you're leaving some of that worry behind. However, when you're car traveling, if especially when you're new to some of this, if you're particular about things in terms of self-care, bring it.
Because you can.
Because you can.
It's your car. It's your space.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so that's something I encourage people to do, and I have for years. And some who have taken me up on it. So here's this one that did. She's in New York, and she was a young gal, about 24 years old, and she didn't even own a car. And Airbnb was just coming on board. I love Airbnb, by the way.
Me too. I'm with you.
So just so you know, I went to Denver for a conference, and the rooms at the hotel for the conference were over $200 a night. And I stayed through an Airbnb for $45 a night, and I was within a quarter mile of the conference. It was
Absolutely.
walking distance. It was
Yep.
fantastic.
Well,
So
plus,
anyway.
did you have a kitchen?
Oh yeah, I had full access. The whole apartment was fine.
That's what I do the same thing. If I'm going for a conference and I can find an Airbnb nearby and I have my own kitchen, so I can take care of any of my, not necessarily special dietary needs, but whatever I need to take care of me.
Well, quickly,
Finish your
I
story,
told
sure.
this 24-year-old, and she was aghast. She said, "You did what?" I said, "All right, so here's my challenge to you. I want you to consider going to Enterprise Car Rental because they have $10 weekend rentals. You only have 500 miles, but my goodness, the things you can do in 500 miles. You're going to fill up the tank, right, if it isn't already filled with gas, and you're going to take off for a day, and you're just going to explore the area that you live. And when you get back, you're going to make note of all the things that you wouldn't have seen had you not been in the car."
Right.
She was so cute. I was just talking, right? A
Right.
week or so later, she calls me. And she says, "Charlene, I did it.
Ah!
I did it." I said, "Well, good for you. What'd you do?" And she described it, and she said, "It was fun, and it was so cheap. I didn't know that there was this diner down here. I didn't know about the trees that lined the road." She said, "It was the most beautiful drive. I knew we had a mountain, right? And she said, but I'd never seen the mountains. So I went up into the mountain area. And she went far enough that for her, it was an adventure. And that's all that mattered.
Exactly.
She was changed by it in a positive way.
Yep.
And that made my day.
Well, and I've talked about this before, but sometimes it's, a lot of people have that interest and they feel like they're weird or like, why, and there's hesitation for whatever reason. And I often find that somebody, just one person, it can be a random person or a person of influence for them, who gives them permission.
Yeah.
That it is okay for them to be curious and want to go and try this weird, different thing called solo travel. Once they get that permission, it's like the whole world can change for them.
I'm in such agreement with that. Now, I have that with other things. I have that where I need permission from somebody I respect and admire, a mentor or an inner circle kind of person. I have that and other things. And travel, no, it's just a natural extension of how I live because that's the way I grew up. And so, you know, I don't know how to be afraid when I'm on the road or when I'm
Correct.
traveling. I don't know how to do that. And part of it is because I'm as prepared as I possibly can be.
Yep.
When I was 14, I spent a summer in Germany. I went over by myself. I stayed with a family member, traveled the countryside of Germany because I was 14 with a family member. But I would wander off on my own, scare the family member. But it's,
Yes.
that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for, is to learn about things and to see different things and to be better for the experience. But I never thought like that, right? I still really don't think I'm going to do this because I'm better for the experience. I still think I just want to know and I want to do it. So I'm going.
Well, and so for anybody who's waiting for permission, permission granted.
Oh, yes, I bestow all the blessings upon you and tell you you have every permission checked off that says fill the gas tank and go.
You are able and willing and strong and curious and all of those things that will make you an amazing solo traveler. You just haven't put them maybe to the test yet. So permission granted. I love it.
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So let me talk about maybe one of your biggest challenges in solo travel. You know, it's not always sunshine and roses. Sometimes things aren't good. Some things are hard. Sometimes we're working through something or stuff comes up for us that we don't expect. Do you have anything that you can share with our listeners on that?
Do you want like personal internal stuff or do you want, oh, I didn't expect that adventure?
How about both?
Okay. Well, so yes, there have been times when I've found myself feeling off. And it's not the area, it's always people. Now remember, I told you I was an introvert, I had social anxiety and I was shy. And I knew how to overcome that by picking out the one person in a group that I felt like maybe would be open to helping me out a little bit. And I always approached it in a manner of, I'm wondering if you can be of help to me. I'm new to the area. I knew what to say, right? Regardless of how I felt, I could at least say something.
Sure, you had the words.
Yeah. And I have been in situations where I did not feel like there was anybody who I could approach. And that is when it can get a little scary, because I will be the first to tell you that I'm independent and I'm self-sufficient. But when I'm in a group of people, now nothing is in my control. And so I have to be aware of that. And what am I going to do if there isn't anybody here that is approachable? And this is awkward. And I'm actually getting a little uptight. And then the anxiety will set in. And so what do? Well, always when that happens, I take a deep breath and I assess myself and my surroundings. And I determine, what can I do? Literally, what can I do? And more often than not, it is I am backing away, I'm walking away, I'm going to my vehicle, I am out of here. Now, I've had that with just what appeared to be an innocuous crowd of nothing out of the ordinary, mixed everything, diversity, everything you can think of kind of crowd. And I've had that where I've walked in, where I've realized, now this is going to be fun, when you realize that, wow, everybody's carrying, they're all men, and they're all burly, and I don't know a single one of them, and 3 of them are looking at me like I don't like to be looked at. Okay, what do we do now, right? Well, the same thing. But again, I think it's because I'm always prepared. And I've done this for so long that I know I can quickly assess myself and the area around me, and I've always got an exit. And so it's the deep breath, quick assessment. I'm just going to walk out nonchalantly because there's no need for running.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go to my vehicle. And when I do, I lock all the doors and the heart's pounding. And I sat in that vehicle and said, oh God, okay. And start shaking. I can't do this right now. I have to leave before it hits. And so I do. And I have left the area and gone to where I feel was a safer place, had my little breakdown. I'm okay, and I look and everything's in its place. And I do a meditative type of thing, if you will, where I just quietly focus on breathing, calm myself, and then I start praying and I get in touch with my spirit, and I'm okay. I am okay, and that's what's important. So let's just move to the next town and chalk it up as something interesting that happened along the way.
Absolutely. I mean, what are the alternative ways to handle that, right? Like there are people say, like, what else would you do? And there are other ways to handle it. But so don't think like if you would handle that situation differently, that's not a good way. But the reality is we all have choices about how we look at our situations.
Yeah. And please remember, I don't carry a handgun. I'm also not trained in self-defense. And I always thought I probably should be, but I'm not. I'm 53 and so far so good, right? And I happen to be always aware of my surroundings. As a woman, I was taught that growing up. I was taught, and I taught myself how to always know where you are, know why you're there, know how to get out.
Perfect.
And when I was dating back in the day, right, that's one of the things my mother taught me was you always had the money. Back then there were corner phone booths. Here's the dime and then the quarter. And again, you know where you're going, be aware of who's around you, watch him.
Right.
And if at any time you feel uncomfortable, you make the phone call.
Yep.
So, or you leave. If you have to leave, that's fine. You leave first and you walk away. So that's always been with me. And that's just, I think it's just a normal thing when I travel now is know where I am, know who's around me. If it looks weird, I'm out of there. I don't even stop sometimes. I just, the assessment happens. So I'm able to discern really what's good for me and what's not along the way.
Well, and you learn as you go, and then you trust your gut and you trust your experience as well.
Always. So here's permission for those listening that have difficulty trusting their gut because they're afraid they might hurt somebody's feelings, be called a name, have somebody else later, right? Sometimes this is the experience I see other people have. I've actually had it myself, but I don't take it seriously, where people have said, well, you're such a wimp. It wasn't that big a deal. It looked great, right? There was nothing wrong there. Yeah, well, that was my decision. See ya. But when you have that, right? When you have that, it's that feeling of second guessing yourself, and don't.
Right.
Don't. It is the only way I know to describe it is the people that you have that feeling about don't really care about you, do they? You're in a room, in an area, in a situation that you believe you need to leave.
Right.
You don't have to explain yourself to anybody. And when you look back on it, look at the people that were around you at the time. They had no interest in you. They were there because of the way they thought and they felt and they believed. So you're not hurting anybody. You're taking care of you because you're the only one that can. So there's your permission that if it feels hinky, you got a heebie-jeebie, that's what I've looked at people and said, I'm done, and just walked away. It just walked away. Those who know me well know what's happening. But when I'm traveling by myself, hyper aware, I just walk away.
I think it makes such a difference because, again, whether it's intuition or based on, hard fact, whatever that is, we're the only ones who are going to advocate for ourselves.
Yes. Well, you're the one feeling it.
Yep.
So if you're the one feeling it, then it must be real. So take it seriously and do something about it, right?
It's so funny because at one point I was in corporate and I had a conversation with my boss, and I said to my boss at one point, gosh, I really just don't feel like you have my back. And her response was, what does that mean? And I said, that says it all.
It says it all. It does.
Okay.
So that's one situation, right, where you can't control what you can control and what you can't. And that's the internal anxieties and ick and heebie-jeebies and all that comes with an experience that you're very uncomfortable with. So another one is, and that's an adventure in itself. That's one that I can learn from and I can grow from and I'm better for. There's other adventures that happen on the road, and these are the ones that could happen that oftentimes will prevent people from just going out and checking things out because it's tornado season, because it's hurricane season, because there could be a huge snowstorm. Well, I'm here to tell you that just because it might doesn't mean it will. And even if it does, so what? You're going to add it to your adventure.
Absolutely.
So I've been in Hays, Kansas. I had full intention, still regret this, that I couldn't go out and see the buffalo, and that there were 2 or 3 places in town that I was really looking forward to seeing. I'm in my hotel room, and my curtains are suddenly move inward. And then I hear the whistling of the wind coming through the window and the door. And I look out and things are flying that ought not be flying out there. And my phone is going weather alert. So I look at the phone and the phone's telling me there's tornadoes. And I'm looking at myself in the mirror by this time because I'm packed, I'm done. Look in the mirror and I said, I'm on the 2nd floor of a hotel. That's not a good place to be in a tornado. I think now would be a good time to leave. And so I packed everything up. My intention, quite honestly, was just to go down to the lobby area and ask for the safe place. And as I got down there, I realized I was looking on the weather map for the weather alert that I got. I was looking at the skies, and it wasn't even raining yet. And I know how tornadoes work. We just have the initial start wind. And I said, I'm going to see how far I can go on the road because I know what's on that road ahead. I had just driven it, so I knew where I was going. Mm-hmm. And I got on the road, and it turns out that big spirally thing behind me wasn't the tornado I thought it was, and I outran it. And it was a beautiful thing when I went from just overcast driving rain and seeing the tornado way off in the distance behind me. And I could see up front of me the stark demarcation line of bright sun and blue skies.
Sure.
That's what I drove towards. And then I was there.
You're driving towards the light.
That's it. So I drove towards the light and I made it. And I said, well, I outdrove that one. And I've outdriven tornadoes a couple of times.
And this is a risk that I'm not going to necessarily recommend, but she made a calculated risk. I would put all my disclaimers in front of that. Yeah. But it's real. Like, you have experience that allows you to make an educated decision on how you chose to behave.
I did. I was familiar with the initial onslaught that usually happens. Usually.
Sure.
Of course, there are times when a tornado will come out of clear blue skies. I know that. But I was familiar with the kind of weather pattern that was happening, and it was a calculated risk. But I also knew how long it would take me to get to the next town.
Absolutely.
And I was thinking ahead, right? And I did it.
I love it.
I'm the only one I've outrun.
Charlene, it has been such a pleasure chatting with you today. I can't believe we're almost out of time, and I want to make sure that you have a chance to share a little bit about your business and things that you have coming up and how people can find you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jennifer. Well, I am the owner of Search by Burke, and what I do is I provide business research to manufacturers and service companies. I do training in social media and social selling for individuals and teams and companies, and I host and facilitate mastermind groups for business owners. And all of that can be found at searchbyburke.com. I encourage anybody to just look me up online, Charlene Burke. I'm all over the place. Connect with me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and say hi.
Fantastic. Charlene, thank you so much for engaging in this conversation today. You know, everybody has their own story, and I love the philosophies that you've brought into the experiences that you've shared, and shared your why and some of your how, and a little bit of the fun and crazy that you've had going along with this.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer. It has been a pleasure being with you today.
Wasn't it great to hear the stories that Charlene shared with us today? After we were done recording, she shared so many more. Outrunning the tornado was just the tip of the iceberg for her. It's important to remember that there are unintentional consequences of travel, and they can be very instrumental in your personal growth and development. But we've reached the end of today's episode, and the conversation doesn't have to end there. Go to www.transformviatravel.com to join our email list, follow us on Facebook at Transform Via Travel, or subscribe to us on Twitter at Go Solo Live. Don't forget to rate and review the show on whatever podcast tool you're using to listen. And if you like what you've heard, please invite your friends to listen to Go Solo Live as well. I'm always looking for more guests. If you're interested in being a guest, please reach out to me directly at Jennifer@transformviatravel.com. And until next time, remember, go solo, not alone.